All right, lastly, let's do this. There is this, it is so disturbing, folks, what's going on in Congress. Of course, it all has to do with pronouns. And this is where we're going to get a lot of this. And they're trying desperately to sort of rev this up, where it's going to be, they shift to culture. In moments when in doubt, they shift to sort of like some type of culture war on the right. Here is Kilmeade and Ainsley Earhart talking about the new House rules about pronouns and naming conventions. Incidentally, we should do number 7 too? Okay, let's, all right, we should do both of them?
I think they both get to the same point that you're making right now about shifting the culture.
Oh, okay. So, all right, this is our first one. So this is the first shift to culture, right? And look, in the House, there are rules about you can't name people specifically. You cannot criticize, you can get censured essentially or admonished because there's, sort of rules about being polite to people. Mm-hmm. But when they encroach upon our cultural values, my goodness, here's clip number 8.
Where did this stuff come from, and how could this be the first thing on your agenda? The other thing on our agenda is exactly the fear that everyone worries about with happening in Georgia. She's going to go try to make D.C. a state. So, okay, let's do gender-neutral terms, make D.C. a state. Oh, there's a pandemic. Vaccines are having trouble getting out of the hopper. We got 2 more that got to be approved. You have a situation where you have an emerging China. I can go over 25 other things that should even be mentioned. This shouldn't even be considered. Whose agenda is this? If I asked Nancy Pelosi this 10 years ago, do you think she would have said where?
So they're bemoaning the fact that there's talk of Georgia's statehood, and there's talk DC statehood, and the idea that House rules are where we're just going to not have gendered references to Congress people. And he's complaining about all these things that are broken in America that she's supposedly not dealing with. Hey, dude, you have a national television show every day that you have not complained about these broken things. Who's been in charge of the country? It's as if just all these problems just showed up out of nowhere today.
Well, what's really crazy is they have to lump DC statehood with something that's makes people angry in the Fox audience, but that's pretty freaking racist. Have you ever heard them mention DC statehood ever on Fox News? And if so, it's probably was something that they're more outraged about. So now it's all lumped together. When you hear DC statehood, you think pronouns, liberal agenda, rather than what's so controversial about DC statehood to Republicans?
Well, there's a lot of problems in the country that just that came out right after because Joe Biden is the president-elect. That's the issue.
I will say that DC statehood is a pretty easy cultural argument for the right to get people to dislike. One, we want all 50 states. It's all we've ever known. This is society, American flag, 50 stars. And also just DC is filled with swampy elites with a liberal agenda, and we don't want them having more power.
Or people of color, which is what this is really about.
I know.
Yes. We could play that ad from that new congresswoman too, with her packing the extremely wealthy, expensive part of Washington, D.C. But here, is there any more of that clip? Keep playing it.
Years ago, do you think she would have said, where did that come from? We don't care about that. Who is pushing this stuff forward?
Brian, she's saying if it's ombudsman, change it to omsbud. Don't add the man. But my question yesterday when we were in a break, I said, does that mean Congresswoman needs to change to Congress? Is she Congress Pelosi?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, that's gender specific. Congresswoman.
Congress member.
Congress member.
Because they're already members of Congress. You just.
Oh my God.
How horrific would that be if they called people congressperson?
Once again, Ducey, coming in, trying to check them. He is.
Well, to be honest with you, Congress member is really not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
He's like, guys.
Ducey. He's like the
quit
check on Fox and Friends, but he'll only very lightly do it. He's just like a little drizzle of salt on top, right? I don't know.
Does his son still work there? His son's a reporter for Fox. It'd be interesting. Maybe he's.
No, I saw them sitting together at the Bernie rally.
Oh, in the press section. I thought you meant they were like a secret Bernie supporters.
I was like, that guy looks like a younger Steve Doocy, and then I realized it's Steve Doocy and his son.
Yeah. Oh, he's the one who went up to Ossoff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He looks like him.
Yep.
They got the same hair and everything.
Son, good try, but it just didn't work out for you. Sorry. Here is, speaking of the last entrance into the culture war. Here is Fox and Friends, and this is where they've got to really cultivate the grievance, the conservative grievance. We're going to hear this so much, folks. You're not allowed to be a conservative anymore. You're not allowed to speak. This is basically just an extension of you can't comment on, like it used to be. I could come in and I could see my secretary and I could say, "Hey, sweetie, you got great legs." And now you can't do that. I mean, we're so oppressed. Here it is. Here's Will Cain and Pete Hegseth on the weekend Fox and Friends, I think it is.
And sometimes Pete and I pretend to be friends on television, but we are friends sometimes off camera as well. We were having a steak last night talking about this, and this is how I feel. I think Americans, I think Republicans, conservatives can be forgiven for their skepticism, because whether or not an election was rigged, it certainly feels like society is rigged right now. From the complete squelching of dissent on college campuses, inside the media institutions, to being lied about the Hunter Biden story, to watching President Trump impeached, every step of the way watching President Trump undermine his legitimacy question, that when you deal with that for not just 4 years, but decades, you start to think, if not an election, the entire society is rigged against people who hold my values. And at some point, Steve Ainsley and Brian, you begin to understand that kind of skepticism.
Especially at the end when you're told, no, you can't question it. There will be no questioning at the end. The more you're told not to question, the more you're told not to challenge, the more people feel like, something's not right here.
See, they're so close to understanding that there is a rigged system, but they just completely are on the polar opposite of what is actually rigged about it, because it's all about, we're the victim.
I think it's very thoughtful, and they're trying to prey on vulnerable people and flip it to this is where you should channel your energy. It's not that the economy is broken because of the oligarchs. It's the immigrants' fault. It's not this. The society is rigged because of college campus suppression. What?
Because of wokeness. I mean, here's the thing that's really sort of gross is that I can tell you, like, I knew Will Cain back when he was on CNN like a decade ago. And that dude is playing a part. And we'll talk about cynicism. That is just
so many of these folks. I mean, that we were talking about Meghan McCain earlier, and if she truly has an ideology, you'd be shocked at how many of these pundits on television are really just pretending for the camera and are basically news actors. It's
stunning.
And their backgrounds too. I mean, what's his name? The guy who, oh my God, he has that show. He's a big Trump person. He's young. He's kind of attractive. He's from Pennsylvania. He had an affair, got married to another person who's an intern on Fox News. Very recent. Whatever. I'll think of his name in a second. You know who he is. He's one of the most egregious people on Fox.
Jesse Waters.
Jesse Waters. Thank you. Jesse Waters' parents are like union members and activists. And he has like a progressive background, and he just flipped because Bill O'Reilly said this is the kind of guy that we need to bring in, and groomed him.
There are clips of him reading out tweets or texts his mom sent him saying, "You should be actually ashamed of what you're doing." And he's like, "Ha, Mom."
Yeah, I remember those clips. I mean, yeah, it's all really cynical, and part of, like, I think a lot of the hatred of the media sometimes comes from a bad place that's engendered by people like Trump. But then there are those disingenuous moments where you're like, if this is what people think the media is, I get why they hate the media.